welcome to Rico 12. I'm Justin, your host and a beautifully imperfect, stumbling, bumbling child of an absolutely powerful and perfectly loving God and an addict living in the miracle of recovery. Rico 12 is all about exploring the common threads of addiction and sharing tools and hope from those on a similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and places to learn and support one another. Our speakers represent various fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, thus showing the common threads of recovery no matter our addiction or affliction. Today's speaker for the 254th meeting is Debbie S., a first-time Rico 12 speaker. Her chosen topic today is Ninth Step Healing, and I look forward to hearing her message here in a few minutes. First, for some business. Rico 12 has several recovery resources in our family of podcasts and social media communities. To learn more, listen more, connect more, or just hang out and learn and grow with us, you can check out the other podcasts that you can find at www.rico12.com. And to join in our social communities, check out the chat in the show notes. And also feel free to send an email to rico12pod@gmail.com. That's RECO12POD@gmail.com. And we can get you hooked up with the WhatsApp community, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you would like to get connected with there. I feel to share a recent review written for one of the Rico 12 podcasts, Noodle It Out with Nikki M., which releases every Tuesday. And I recently received this review from Stephanie, who said, quote, "This pod helped me feel like I could get through the depression of withdrawal, and it inspired me to believe in this contagious enthusiasm." Thank you so much, Stephanie. We all hope that you are continuing to feel and share that enthusiasm in your own walk and in your own recovery. And just a quick reminder that you out there in the listening world, if you are willing to rate and review Rico 12 or any of our affiliated podcasts, that would be very helpful in helping us work our 12th step by getting this message out to as many people as we can. Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue our mission. Thanks this week to Abigail for her contribution and becoming a Rico 12 spearhead. If you out there also feel the desire to become a spearhead and support this cause, please visit rico12.com/support or click on the links in the show notes and chat for one-time or monthly donation options. Your support really does make a difference in keeping us able to share these messages of recovery. We look forward each meeting to receiving from the light reflected in our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now let's introduce our guest speaker for today, Debbie S., and give a little background on her. Debbie first came into the 12-step rooms in 1981. Her first sober date was in 1987, and her current and permanent sober date is January 31st of 1994. After a long history of trouble at home, school, police, rehab, detox, jail, DUI, psych ward, diagnoses, medication, etc., Debbie finally surrendered. After 3.5 years sober for the second time, she was ready to suicide. In this situation, she allowed a recovered member to take her through the big book and the steps. Finally recovered, Debbie did all of her 9th step amends in a meaningful way and now lives in steps 10 through 12. Take it away, Debbie. The floor is yours.
Well, now I'm weepy. It doesn't take much. My name's Debbie, and I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much for having me, asking me to share on this step. It's definitely one that's really dear to my heart. If I were ever asked to speak on a step, it would undoubtedly be 1, 9, 10, or 12. And given my choice, which I was here, it would be 9. So yeah, this is really, really special. I hope that there's something I share that is helpful to someone. So I guess I'll start. Well, you know what? It's funny. I always start with my sobriety date, but you just did that for me. Yeah, I'm trying. Okay. So maybe I'm so used to doing this just a little different way. I forgot about that part. Okay. So like I said, Debbie, alcoholic. I am gonna perhaps just touch on a couple of things about my story and history, but primarily just focus exclusively on the 9th step. and the experience I've had with that, because it has really been profound. Um, I very much, understand and appreciate that all of the steps are so crucial, and they work together in a way that is just, I just don't have words. But so, every last one of them is necessary, and it's so clear to me that they build upon one another, and that there's just so many things. And yet, every now and then people will talk about a particular step that just blew them away, that just changed everything. And I don't know about you, but I often hear people talk about the fifth step that way. And my fifth step experience wasn't that way. And I remember worrying a little bit. I remember wondering if something went wrong, because, I felt as though I had done it, and at a level that felt, that, I don't know, there was a lot of integrity with it. And I don't know, I just worried a little bit. And when I got to nine, I understood. But the thing is, it took all the previous steps to get to nine. And I get that too. So it's so funny. I just happened to, or God, made certain of it. I just happened to connect with someone yesterday who was really picking my brain about this particular step and my experience with this step. So I ended up practically having a trial run yesterday, and I hope that doesn't interfere. I might get to thinking I've already said something because I just said it yesterday. Hopefully, I won't not say something today. But it was really powerful for me to share, and I ended up just completely reduced to tears just talking about it yesterday. Um, I had had a lot of experience with going about the steps a lot of different ways, including many, many, many times just avoiding them. And also plenty of kind of glossing over, and maybe skimming the surface of a few. I've been here since the early 80s. There was a lot of, there's been times in our history where there was strong belief in, if you were here, clearly you'd work one through three and just launch into four, and all I can tell you is that didn't work for me. It just didn't work for me. I had to be taken through all the steps, and I had to understand every last one of them, not in my head, but in my gut. And, so and I'd done, God, workshops galore, and step studies, and worksheets, and workbooks, and, fancy, expensive workbooks designed to take yourself through the steps. And, all I can tell you is it didn't work for me. I was still suffering. It was not the answer. And when I finally hit rock bottom in the rooms, surrendered in a way that I clearly never had before, and reached out for help in a way that I apparently hadn't before, I hooked up with this woman that I think of as my first real sponsor. She was not my first sponsor, but I definitely think of her as my first real sponsor, and frequently refer to her that way to this day. And she took me through the book and the steps in a way no one ever had before. And it was very consistent and committed and disciplined, and all kinds of things that I didn't like very much at all. And it was very slow and thorough. And I know sometimes that can seem like a contradiction, but I just can assure you it wasn't. We just studied every ounce of what the big book had to say about each step. And so I'm going to focus the rest of my time talking about the ninth step, because I don't want to miss out on so many of the things that I want to share about that. But when I talk about my experience with the ninth step, I'm talking about that experience with that woman. I had plenty of other experiences. I've had a little bit of experience with, like, well, again, glossing over it, making the big ones, saying I'm sorry to a few people, picking and choosing who I made amends to, determining that it wasn't necessary to make amends to certain people because of X, Y, and Z, determining that it would only be harmful, to them or someone else or me. Like I thought I was part of the others, which it turns out is not the case as far as I can see. So this is my good experience with the ninth step. And she gave me like a template for writing an amends. And I wrote really meaningful letters to absolutely everyone. And when I say that, sometimes people get a little squirmy and think, oh, I never, I just want to be clear. I never sent a letter. I never once sent a letter. But I wrote it, and I wrote it like a letter. Wrote it like, dear so-and-so. And she was really clear about the things that I needed to touch on in that letter and how vital it was that I not dance around things, that I not, make any excuses for things, that I not leave anything out for any of the sneaky reasons that this thing that I have will come up with that, that are very convincing, but that I just lay it all out there and be very, very clear and plain about not only, all of the things that I said and did and perhaps didn't, but how wrong they were, how, I had absolutely no right to, to do it, and just own it in a way that I'd never owned anything in my life, and all I can tell, well, one of the things I can tell you about it is my ego just hated it. I mean, it seemed like the worst thing I had ever been asked to do, like ever, ever, ever. Because when I talk about the ninth step, I talk about the beauty of it. I talk about the freedom that I've gained, the healing that's been a result. I mean, when I talk about the ninth step, it sounds like it's just this incredible blessing. So when I was thinking about this, I thought, well, I do need to be clear that it didn't feel that way. It didn't start that way. I wasn't convinced it's one more time where I just had to do the work, show up and do the work no matter what. And then I knew. I never, I couldn't have figured it out before then. I could have never known, understood, appreciated what this was going to be like until I had the firsthand experience. And so anyways, like the process, the prospect, just it sounded like death. And my sponsor said that it kind of was, that it was ego death, that it kind of was, that it was ego death. And I believe that today. Like that just makes perfect sense to me. And so it was painful. I resisted every fiber of my being, but I was desperate. I was finally, finally, finally desperate. And like the book talks about, I was willing to do just about anything to get well. I really was. I mean, anything. I mean, I remember people talking about things like I'm going to regress for just a second, but people would talk about the fifth step and they'd say, things like I have to know that I can trust this person with every ounce of my being. I would have given it publicly. I would have. I was so desperate to get free. I would have given it naked. I mean, really. And so that you have to understand that's where I was. That's where I was with this. Finally, it took a lot to get there, but that's where I was. And when I made the amends, well, okay, just because I'm so afraid I'm gonna mess around and run out of time, I'm gonna start with the end because I wanna be sure to share one thing. Um, when I was making these amends, I had a lot of them. I had a lot of them. It took a long time. And it was really tempting at several different places to like, haven't I done enough of these? They kind of felt like the same amends, like to all the exes or to everyone on the sex inventory or, all these different things. But at the end, I remember I had like two left. And man, I don't know what my number is. I don't remember anymore, but it was big, and I had two left. And I thought, well, this has got to be enough. This is good enough. And I had a good sponsor. I had a really good sponsor. And she, reminded me of the things that I needed to be reminded of. One of those amends was one that I, you know, didn't really want to make. And the other one was one that it was really kind of truly still my plan to take to my grave. Was not making it. And so I did the one that I didn't want to make. And then I just had the one that I was taking to my grave. And I thought, certainly this has got to be enough. I mean, I've made all of the others. And I've made them in such a meaningful way. And I've had this profound experience around it. And my sponsor helped me see by using the big book, like she always did. She helped me see that if I didn't make this one, just this one, even though it was the very last one, if I didn't make this one, well, the last ninth step amends, if I didn't make this one, I might drink again and I might not get to stay and I might not get to be here, you know? And that amends was towards my dad. And I thought I hated him. I thought he was like an evil monster. I really did. I thought I hated him. I had such bitterness. I mean, I held on to this resentment for dear life. I don't think that I knew that I had this idea at the time, but I sure do now. I had this idea that if I made amends to him, it would somehow let him off the hook. And I didn't want to let him off the hook. And that was the biggest problem, you know. I I had this false idea that I was punishing him by holding on to the amends. And I very much wanted to continue to punish him. I didn't know how to let go of that. And so somehow when my sponsor got through to me what this could mean to me, I had this moment. It was so selfish and so self-centered and so kind of yucky. But like in a way, I just thank God so much because in a way it's really beautiful. I thought, because what happened for me is I thought, well, I'm not going to let him do that to me too. You know, that was it. Like I made the amends at him, like it was kind of ugly, it was kind of ugly. But and it was still a process. I mean, my sponsor first convinced me to write the amends. She said, maybe you'll never make it, just write it. And man, that was a process. That was a very painful process. But, so there were all these stages, but she finally got me to make it. And then, I'm willing, I'm finally like, okay, I have all these arguments and I'm telling her, and I mean every last one of them. Like as far as I can tell, this is reality, this is true. And I remember one of my biggest arguments was that there was no way, because I'd written this beautiful letter that was just perfect. And I didn't mean a word of it. I didn't mean a word of it. And I said to her, there is no way I can say this to him and it sound like I even might mean it. Like I'm not capable. It's not possible. I can't do that. Like, how could that possibly not be harmful? And again, I meant it. I mean, this wasn't like me trying to squirm out of it, although perhaps it was, but I mean, I meant it with every fiber of my being. And she said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. God will take care of that. That's not your job. That's not your problem. Your job is to show up and read the letter. She said, just read every word. Just look at, just read every word. She said, I don't care if you choke, literally choke on every word as though you were choking on your own vomit, is what she said. She had a lovely way of putting things. She said, I don't care if you choke on every word as though you're choking on your own vomit. Just say the words. God will take care of the rest. And I thought, okay, I'm not buying it, but okay. And she also told me to call my dad. Well, first of all, I had to find him because I severed all ties and cut him out of my life forever, of course. But when she said, call him, I found his number. She said, call him and invite him to breakfast. She said, you want to meet him as early as possible. Maybe he won't be as drunk. Maybe he won't be as angry. Maybe he won't be as, whatever, be safe about it. Be smart about it. Invite him to breakfast. And I'm like, breakfast? I'm going to buy this. I mean, like what? I'm going to buy this man breakfast. And you can imagine, I was like, it doesn't say that anywhere in the big book. I shouldn't have to do that. That's not part of the deal. But and most of this argument, by the way, just to be clear, was all in my head. I mean, I rarely said any of these things out loud to my sponsor. I kind of wouldn't have dared, which is a good thing. I mean, I had that kind of sponsor. But man, my head was just screaming. And so I made this breakfast date with my dad. And I got there and I walked up to him and he had no idea who I was. Just none. None. Even when I stood there, right in front of him, I was like, give him a moment, he didn't know. And when I started talking to him, I mean, you could tell he was trying to figure out, who is this? I'm here waiting for my daughter. Who is this woman that's, finally, I don't even remember how we worked it out, but finally, it either clicked or I told him, or I don't know, but we worked it out. That was a little bit shocking. That was a little bit weird. And there ended up being a lengthy wait at the restaurant. So I ultimately said to him that if he wanted to, we could step away a little more privately and I could, share it with him right now. Or we could do it, right after breakfast as well. Whatever, my sponsor was really good about whatever's works for them, whatever's best for them, whatever's most convenient for them, whatever's most comfortable for them. So I sort of said that to him and he said, okay, well, we can go out to my truck. So we went out to his truck. Um, I read the letter to him. I choked on every word. I just, I just choked on every word. I heard my voice. I heard the choking, I had just enough program in me to be mortified by it, to think this is not good. This is not good at all. And when I finished, it was really clear that my dad had had a different experience. you know, he had heard it different. He was he was visibly, moved, touched, even emotional. And my dad is not an emotional guy. He has some signs, he has some tells, and his leg was bouncing, and he was trying to be a man about it. He was trying to keep it together, but he was really taken aback. And I was blown away. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And I felt exactly the same. Nothing had happened for me. Nothing. And I just stood there. It was quite a thing. It was quite a shock. It may have been the first time in my recovery experience where I feared that maybe it didn't work, like maybe it didn't work, because I felt exactly the same. Nothing had changed for me. And I still had to have breakfast with him and pay for it. And I was not happy. And so we went back, we waited, we eventually got called in, and I'll never ever forget. I can see it in my mind's eye today. This was a bunch of years ago. My dad's been dead a bunch of years. This was a bunch of years ago. And we got called in and we got put in this little corner booth, kind of a dark corner. And I hopped up and was, just kind of getting situated. And once I did, and, sort of had to look up, had to look up and look across the table at him, I had the most profound spiritual experience I've ever had in my life. I I don't know what happened. I mean, I looked up and it was as though I saw the truth for the first time ever. And the truth was that my dad was very, very, very sick, very, very sick, suffering terribly. He was old, he was all alone, and he was dying. He was just dying. And I saw it, and I had this depth of compassion that I'm not sure I've ever had for anyone, and would have never, ever, ever thought I could have for my dad. I mean, just never, ever, ever. It was like, at least I have this sneaking suspicion. I mean, God knows, I don't pretend to know God or understand God or, know his ways, but I can't help but have this sneaking suspicion that it's like, God let me see him through his eyes. It's like I saw him as God sees him. And it changed everything. It changed everything. I didn't have to hate him anymore. I didn't have to I didn't want to punish him anymore. Anything but, I didn't want to punish him anymore. I wished him freedom. He didn't get to get free. He died of this thing, and it was ugly. And I saw every bit of it. And I got to show up with him for a number of years before he died. I got to be the best daughter I could to him. He was not available to be anything for me, but I got to be there for him. And I hope there's time to share this one last thing, because it's probably probably the most special of all. But during that time that I showed up with him and just, did my best to be a good daughter to him the last years of his life, I did a lot of being of service to him. He needed it, And this one time I had been, of great service to my dad. I had, you know, I was kind, I checked on him, I offered, I did things. I had this list of things. I had, run errands for him and picked up things for him and purchased things for him, and, had this list of, for dad stuff. And then I stopped at this local restaurant that I just knew the day that I was delivering all this stuff. I stopped at this restaurant that I just knew my dad would love. I didn't tell him about it. He didn't know. And I got him this, just a wonderful, I mean, nothing fancy, nothing expensive, but I just got him this wonderful meal that I knew he would enjoy. And I drove to where he lived, and I showed up and hand delivered all of it. And he was just kind of a jerk. He was drunk and he was mean, and it just, he was just a jerk. And I remember being in the car outside his place, vibrating with rage, sobbing, because that's what I did when I was mad back then. I cried, and I couldn't drive. I couldn't function. And I called my sponsor, and I was so mad, and I was, I was so hurt. And I kept saying to her, like, why do I always have to be the better, the bigger person? Why do I always have to be the better person? Why do I always have to do the right thing? Why me? Why, like, poor me? I just went on. I mean, I was just beside myself. And it was like the last time, I mean, it was almost like a mantra, like, why me? Why do I, why does it always have to be me? Why is it always on me? And she said to me, just like this, with this voice that just, it stopped everything, she said, because you can. She said, because you can. He can't. And I don't know about you guys, but I heard that, like, I'm capable today. I got to get well. I got to live. I'm the only one in my family who's survived, who survived alcoholism. I'm the only one alive. Everybody else is gone. I'm the only one alive. And we've all been in and out of jails and institutions and psych wards, and at all the other places we end up. We've all been in and out of AA and NA and, everything under the sun. We've all presumably, and maybe I shouldn't presume that, but, we've all been in and out of the rooms for a long, long time. But I was the only one who really, really, really finally, thank God, surrendered. And I'm not even sure I did it. I wonder if maybe God surrendered me. But I was surrendered. I was given this opportunity, and I took it. I think maybe that's part of it. Like, sometimes there's just this, it seems to me today that sometimes there's just this window, just this sliver. And if you'll just take it, and thank God that time I was willing to take it. And I've been here ever since. And I've been sober ever since. And I can honestly say, and I love to say this whenever I get a chance to share, I can honestly say that in the years since I took the steps, not in the years that I was dry and sick and suffering from untreated alcoholism, but in all the years since I took the steps, which has been 27 and a half or something, I have never once had the most fleeting thought of drinking or using. I have never once had the most fleeting thought of suiciding. I have never once had the most fleeting thought of going away from this program. And those are the big threes for me. And man, are they big, and I really mean that with all my heart. I am here for life. I, you know, I am recovered, I've been given this thing, and I'm getting, I'm I don't know, I just feel like I'm getting well. I'm getting well. I feel like I'm healing more and more and getting freer and freer as time goes on. And I'm in my I guess I'm technically in my 31st year, but I'm been 30 years since January, and I can tell you just this year God is doing stuff with my insides. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that I get to stay, and that I understand what a privilege it is to get to stay and give back, and be here with you guys today. So thank you so much for letting me share.
Beautiful share. Thank you so much, Debbie. We really appreciate your vulnerability, your experience, your strength, your hope. And I've written down several questions here. And if any of our live audience, if you have questions, please put those in the chat. We'll get to those as we get along. But I want to start off with what you kind of ended up there with. I'm putting myself in the newcomer's shoes right now. When I come into these rooms and I'm broken and defeated, I want to be completely healed quickly.
Mhm.
And you're talking that, hey, 30 years down the road, God is still moving and healing you. Talk to us about one, how the expectations can't be set that it's going to happen overnight, but two, that there's still hope that it continues to happen.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I when I finally got to the steps, I was like, I always say the best description of the condition I was in was sort of emotionally crippled and socially retarded. I mean, I was barely human, I was barely human. And so for me, it was very slow, it was very slow and very subtle. And my perception, I'm always way behind too. So so it probably wasn't quite as slow and subtle as it seemed to me. I remember having a profound revelation at 9 years and saying, oh my God, suddenly I realized, and someone jokingly said, how suddenly is 9 years, but so I'm a little bit of the slow variety for sure. But what I can tell you is, I'm kind of the last to know. And when I do know, it's always like this monumental revelation. It may not be that way for everyone, but it is for me. And but what I can tell you is the process, as far as I can tell, is it's like, I was just sharing with someone yesterday about the ninth step in particular. It's like every one I made. So I could say this about any step in any part of the process, but I could for sure say it about every amends I made. Brought me back to life a little bit. It brought me back to life a little bit. It made me a little more human. It made me a little more vulnerable. It made me a little more it, uh, it provided just a little bit of like depth and capacity that I'm sure was always there, but that I had, had lost all connection with altogether. And I hope I answered that.
Well, it's beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. Have a question from an anonymous attendee here, and it piggybacks on a question that I've got written down. I'll ask what this person said, and then if there's any follow-up based on what I wrote down, I'll do that. But this person says, can you please speak about your experience of living amends? I'm almost done with all of my direct amends, but still have periods of feeling dry drunk and still feel like I'm in old patterns of behavior. So how do living amends fit in with the direct amends?
Oh my gosh, I love this question, and it's so helpful to me because I overlooked it in my share, and I didn't mean to. So living amends, as far as I can tell, and please forgive me if I'm wrong. I mean, God knows I'm still learning too. But as far as I can know, it doesn't actually talk about living amends. Like that's kind of language that we made up in the rooms. I don't think it actually talks about, calls it living amends in the big book, but so I'm going to presume that I know what the person means by it in the question. Um, uh, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. But so my experience is with ninth step amends, and I very much meant to share this, is it that because see, I never got back to the beginning, and that's okay because I wanted to make sure and say the end. But one of the things that I was taught about amends is that, yes, I'm going to a good deal of trouble to write this beautiful, meaningful, spiritually principled amends so that I can go to this person and make this proper verbal, sort of formal verbal amends. But what's even more important than that is that I amend my behavior, that I not continue to, to say and do the same things that I just made amends to, by the way, to them or anyone else. That was a biggie for me. Just because I make amends to you and make sure I don't do that to you anymore, I have to make sure I don't do that to anyone ever again, with God's help, with the help of the steps, with the work. So I'm not sure what the person meant by living amends, but I think that's the best I can answer that, is that it for me, what I just talked about, it's the most important part. It's just that, like everything else, like I said about the steps, like I kind of feel like 9 through 12 are where it's at with the steps, but I get that I couldn't have ever had that without 1 through 8, and it's the same philosophy, I think. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was and I'm just going to kind of build on that just a little bit. My sponsor, what first times I went through the steps, my sponsors would say, "Hey, yeah, write a letter, but don't go read the letter to the other person. It can sound empty. It can be, whatever." It sounds like your sponsor said, "Hey, write the letter, go read it, and then go from there." Tell us a little bit about that. What does that look like? And not just come across as empty words on the page.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely odd, and I had a lot of intellectual argument, mints about it. But I think it's hard for me to remember all these years later exactly what she said at the time. And a lot of it has just been so deeply instilled in me. But I suspect that at least one of the biggest reasons we do it that way, and I know that my sponsor shared this with me, is if for one thing, there's no way I could have memorized the letter. There's just no way. Could not have done that. I mean, it could not possible. Not for anyone, I wouldn't think. I could have spent months and I wouldn't have got it right. And then I have this thing that I have that, that would have caused me trouble because I would have changed it. I would have tweaked it. I would have, conveniently forgotten something or left something out. And I think that that's the biggest reason we read the letter, so that you're certain to say precisely what you so well prepared with God's help, instead of, maybe kind of winging it and goofing it up a little bit. And the other thing is it is awkward. It is a little bit strange. I always, always, always tell people ahead of time, this is what I'm looking to do. I know it, seems a little bit odd, sounds a little bit odd. I hope you don't mind. I just want to ensure that, that I'm saying exactly what I've prepared. And you're more than welcome to have the letter if you like. It's yours. But I can't just go send it to somebody or hand it to somebody. I have to say it. But that's, as far as I can tell and think of right now, those are the reasons I read it no matter what. And I encourage other people to do the same.
Thank you, Debbie. So we've got another question from our live audience. I'm going to ask a question leading into that you talked about how you were holding on to 2 amends and one that you were going to take to your grave. The ninth step promises that we read and hear about so often from the big book. It says, if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. And so those promises start happening at halfway through, or, that's when we're going to be amazed before we're halfway through. They start happening as we're doing this. And yet, as you said, if I don't clean it all out, I may get drunk again. And if I get drunk, I may die. Talk to us a little bit about that process from before we're halfway through to being all the way done.
Yeah, that's kind of why I thought that, this is good enough. I've done, it's not, because a lot had happened. And, I mean, I was feeling better, I was doing better, life was better. um you know Gosh, on the outside, the promises, I just knocked him out of the, God knocked him out of the park in my, with me. I mean, he must have wanted to make sure I got it, because I mean, I went from, just, like I said, a shell of a human being with nothing to, you know going back to school, becoming a, getting 2 degrees, becoming a first time homeowner. I mean, I didn't make it through high school. Like, what, I mean, this stuff, I mean, you can't make this stuff up, like 2 degrees, homeowner, that kind of stuff was amazing. But for me, the stuff that really matters most to me, I mean, don't get me wrong, that stuff was pretty special. And I'm very grateful, like deeply grateful. But the stuff that I'm most grateful for and that just, blows me away every day is, I shared this with someone yesterday and I was talking about the ninth step, and it could have been just the steps, is that, but yeah, halfway through the ninth step, sorry, I was like, what was the question? Um uh that it was almost like every single one of the amends, and for sure like the halfway part, like when you've done a bunch of them, maybe not halfway exactly, but when you've done a bunch of them, there's something that it's like each one made it a little bit easier for me to be in my own skin. It made it a little bit easier for me to be here, really. It made it a little bit easier for me to be here because I was suicidal. It made it a little bit easier to be in my own skin. It made it a little bit easier to be sober, to be, well, that's being in my, I mean, it just, um, what was the question again
Was
about
the
halfway
yeah, it
through?
was the halfway through and being cleaning out all of the amends, getting all
Yeah,
those done,
yeah. Thank you.
the
My poor brain
progression.
kind of glitched out. Yeah. Because, and I think what happened, the reason I share the story that I do the way that I do is because it's not lost on me that even though I had all those, like miraculous, experiences along the way and was so transformed and changed and blessed, and today I get that if I hadn't made that one, like just one, that last one, my life would be different if I had one. My life, making that last amends. I shared this yesterday and I don't think I did today. Making that last amends, it didn't like magically repair the relationship with my father, but it deeply impacted every other relationship in my life. And I really mean that, like deeply impacted every relationship. And I really believe every relationship since, because it changed me and my capacity to love, my capacity to have relationships.
It's beautiful. I love the way you said that. Lewis, one of our participants here, has this question that goes right along with what I asked. So maybe there's a little bit of different perspective here. So when you were working with somebody who's working the steps, maybe you're their sponsor, maybe it's somebody who's just reaching out to you for give me some experience, strength, and hope, and yet they're not fully removed. They're working their ninth step, they're working their steps and fully not removed. What advice do you have for them beyond just this standard, hey, it's not an overnight matter, be patient, that type of stuff? Tell us a little bit about the advice you have for them to continue on this path.
What can I ask what's meant by not fully removed?
The craving or the desire to drink,
Oh,
use, act
that.
out, whatever may be, isn't fully
So,
removed.
so glad I clarified. I didn't
Yeah.
understand that at all. Um, hmm. Well, I have a feeling this is going to, at least to some people, or possibly come across a little bit like contrite. And I definitely don't mean it that way. But this is my answer, and it's my only answer. Um, I understand the big book to say, and I believe it with every fiber of my being, probably mostly because of my personal experience, that God takes that away. And the book says either God has taken it away or he hasn't. Either God has removed it or he hasn't. I forget the exact language. I'm a terrible, terrible, terrible quoter. But the big book says it. And I've read it many, many, many times, and I believe that. So when I'm faced with someone that's still struggling, I share with them what the big book says, what my experience has been, how much I believe it. And if I feel right about it, if I feel like I'm in a position to, I will encourage them to get on their knees and beg God, no matter who they think, no matter what that means to them or whether they think they believe in one. It doesn't matter. Get on their knees and beg God to remove it, and then act like he has. I know that kind of sounds silly, but my sponsor used to always say that, we sometimes do a lot of asking and even pleading, and and then I can do this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful prayer, and if I then turn and deliberately do something that I've just prayed, I have to at least act like he's answered it, and give my insides a moment to catch up. I've discovered that more and more as time goes on, that my insides take a little bit to catch up. So I beg God to remove it, and then I take right actions, which for me is always in delving deeper into the steps and or my relationship with God. And if that person is not hooked up, working the steps, I might offer to do that with them, or encourage them to get, I think, I know this is another thing that's like a little bit touchy, but you know I've been around a long time, and I've seen a lot of things in the rooms, and I've been a product of a lot of those things in the rooms that I'm gonna speak of. Like, I've been one of them. And a lot of times there's people in the rooms that they're just not recovered. They haven't yet had this experience, and because of that, they don't have it to give. They just don't. And so sometimes people are hooked up with those people, and what they're getting from sponsorship is, in some respects, lovely, like befriending, and inviting them to meetings and introducing them to people, and making them, not making them, but kind of offering some comfort, and at least sort of emotional support. But for me, it's just really, really, really clear that we need more than that. Like, that is not enough. That does not treat alcoholism, and it can produce a false sense of security that can be deadly. I was in the rooms a long time with people who were just, they were part of that philosophy of just don't drink no matter what, just go to meetings and don't drink no matter what. And I went to so many meetings, and I drank so much coffee and smoked so many cigarettes, and I hung out with those people, and I listened to everything they said, and I was just dying. And I would reach out to them, and I would say, and they'd say, easy does it, take it easy, just go home, go to bed, come, don't drink, come back tomorrow. And I'm like, and by this time the booze had been removed. Like, God had somehow taken care of that. The booze had been removed, but the ism had not. The ism was still alive and well. And I remember saying to those people, in my mind, I don't think I ever said it out loud, but I remember saying to those people, you don't understand, I'm not going to make it to tomorrow. Like, I'm not going to make it to tomorrow. I was ready to blow my brains out, and I just couldn't figure it out. And I really began to worry there was something else wrong with me. But I think that today I really believe that I'm just the real thing. Like, I'm a real alcoholic. I'm just, maybe not all of us are. I don't know. It's not for me to judge or figure out, but I am. And I need to know that. I need to be clear about that, and I need to uh, ensure it's treated.
No, I think that is a beautiful way to go through that, Debbie. It helped me see some things myself, so I really appreciate that. And it really goes to, if I'm switching addictive behaviors, yeah, you said the alcohol had been removed, but the ism had not been removed. Actually, can you take just a minute and talk about that, the ism, and what that means to you, and just define it for us?
Yeah, I didn't have a chance in the context of my share, but part of my story is I'm 30 years sober. I'm 27 years off cigarettes. I'm 17 years abstinent and completely free from food addiction, which I'm a bona fide food addict as well. And although I'm completely free, and I have about 13 years completely debt free. That was a bit of a process. Had a lot of stuff around money and shopping and working multiple jobs so that I could get the money to do the shopping and spending and when I was several years for the second time ready to suicide before I finally surrendered and allowed that recovered woman to take me through the big book and the steps like I'd never been before, I what was I going to say about that? Darn it, my brain did something. Um uh
It's about
Sorry.
the ism and removing the
Yeah.
ism. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what was I going to say about right there when I was um oh, thank you. Poor brain. I was also doing some things that, because I know this is a all fellowship. I was also doing some things that I think fit pretty nicely under the SLA umbrella. There was a lot of stuff that I was doing that I did with several years dry that I'd not even done loaded. Like I mean, I was really sick. I was really miserable. I was really uncomfortable and I was looking for a fix. And that's one of the things that I don't know what the right word would be, but just for sure very grateful for, and in a funny way, proud is not the right word, but it's just something that's supremely important to me. That the men in the program are safe for me today, all of them, all of them. Because I came a taker, and I was, flirting with the boys and conning them into doing all kinds of stuff for me. And, I would come to the rooms to get my car fixed or get whatever, Yeah. So,
No, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And I think a lot of us identify with so much of what you just shared there about, coming in as a taker. What can I get out of this rather than what can I put into the stream of life? There's one thing that I really want to get to before we close up here in a few minutes. That moment when after you had read the letter to your dad and you went in and sat in the restaurant across the table from him, and all of a sudden you saw him, and as you just described, as you think God sees him, and that's affected all of your other relationships throughout your life. And yet, in the final years, as you continued to serve him and see him that way, it wasn't reciprocated. How do you maintain sanity, sobriety, peace through something that's a one-sided deal like that? How do you do that?
hmm. Uh, well, I mean, with a lot of God and a lot of the what makes up the 12 steps, which is God, and a lot of support and guidance from a really, really, really strong sponsor that I'm just super grateful I had at the time. She was my sponsor for 11 and a half years. She walked me through some things that, yeah, she was tough. She was tough. And for me, she was kind of the first. How we say things like you can't hear until you can hear. She was kind of the first person I could hear. She's kind of the first person I could hear. So that was very helpful to me because I had a sponsor that would say things like, she would point to things in the book, like it's my duty. Like, what's a spiritual life if it doesn't include your own family? How spiritual am I if I just, she made it really clear to me that I didn't get to just say, oh, he's toxic and just, because that's what I was trying to do. And that's what a lot of people in the rooms were co-signing for many, 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 many years. And I'm really grateful to have, to finally get a different message. When you mentioned you know, serving him those years, before you got to the actual question, there's something that came to me really like sweet and dear that I didn't touch on when I shared, that if I could, I'd love to share now, but it's maybe 2 minutes.
Yeah, please
Okay.
do.
Um, uh, when he passed, following that period of, nothing much had changed, at least, well, I guess how you put it was pretty good. Like, it was sort of a bit one-sided. But when he passed, I discovered, and I discovered it in pieces. Like, I discovered it repeatedly to where I could not ignore it. Turns out my dad had been like relentlessly bragging about me to anyone who would listen. And I thought my dad hated me. I mean, there was no way you could have convinced me that he had any love for me at all. And the idea of him speaking kindly of me to anybody was just, completely beyond me. And it turned out he had bragged about me like crazy. And when he passed, his life was a bit of a mess, like you might imagine. And it's way too long of a story for this, but despite everything, he had done his utmost to have something to leave to me. And whatever he had when that was all said and done was left to me. And that was very powerful too. Like, there was an underlying message in that I'm not even sure I know how to articulate, that was really important. So we just never know. We, in the throes of our illness, we're not ourselves. We're not honest. We're not capable of being honest. We live in self-centered fear. And honestly, and I really, really mean this, I don't know how one-sided it was. If you think about it, I probably got, I know, I feel as though I know I got way more out of it than he did, obviously, you know. So maybe it was one-sided, but maybe the opposite way.
Such a beautiful way to look at it. Thank you so much, Debbie, for a fantastic RICO 12 weekly speaker meeting. If we missed any questions out there from the audience here, or you have more, please consider joining the WhatsApp community. Send an email to rico12pod@gmail.com to join in that conversation. Or if you'd like to get in contact with Debbie, send an email to me. I'll facilitate that connection. If you haven't already done so, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast on Apple Podcasts. It's a powerful way to work step 12. Next Friday, we will be hearing from another first-time speaker, Kevin B., whose topic will be the role of higher power in the 12 steps. And I'm looking forward to hear from him next week. So, Debbie, one thing that that I'd like to ask you here real quick before we close this up with the Lord's Prayer. Do you have any final words of wisdom before we jump into that Lord's Prayer?
Um, the only thing I might say, and besides, thank you so much for letting me do this. I cannot tell you, I am so not a speaker, which probably shows. It's not my forte at all, and yet every time I've been willing to do it, it's just been such a beautiful experience. And this was certainly no exception. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to have been able to. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience for me. I love question and answer too. Like, that's kind of where I thrive. So, so thank you just so much for having me, and allowing me to share the way that you have, and for being so gracious about, I don't think I shared, but I'm dealing with some illness that's affecting my processing. So that might have showed just a little bit. Have a little trouble with my brain here and there, but thankfully I'm still useful, and I'm really, really grateful for that. And the last thing I just wanted to say is, when I talked about, never once having the most fleeting thought of, X, Y, and Z and all this time, it's been in the face of some pretty significant stuff, like, I mean, like, devastating losses, including my little brother, who was my only sibling, being diagnosed with MS, being undiagnosed with MS. I mean, my life is just, it's just been, there's been home flooding, contractor running off with all the insurance money, like life. It's not, life. See, now your face looks sad, but it's not. It's like, yeah, it's so incredible to me that, like life is going to happen, but God is so good. And he just, his everlasting, like goodness and love for me. I'm just carried through it all. And I get to be here with you guys doing this, and I get to work with other women all over the world. And one of my sponsees is here with us from Romania. And it's like, I just can't even tell you how grateful I am. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Bună seara in Romania. We're happy you're here. I speak Romanian, by the way, which is crazy. Very cool. All right. So let's close out with the Lord's Prayer that I will go ahead and say. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Everybody out there, something that Debbie referred to, sometimes there's just a sliver, there's just a ray. Grab hold of that ray, because it is strong enough to do whatever is needed. Keep coming back, and when you do, come all the way in, sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching for glimmers of light, feet still on the ground, I can still be found, standing still.
My wings are torn and tattered, but I know I still can fly. I may not soar unfettered, I may not rise too high.
Recorded in the book of life and bind it with the seal